I've lived in Eden for about 11.5 years. My name is Ruby. One of the big pluses of living on this estate is the community and the mixture of all different kinds of people from different backgrounds and different areas and ages. I get along very well with my next door neighbour. She's a much older than I am lady, but we spend a lot of time together, and she feeds my cat and essentially is like another grandparent to me. During the COVID crisis, I had a lot of problems because I already had issues with leaving the house and being scared of places with a lot of people. And one day I was downstairs in the community kitchen garden planning to go shopping, and I freaked out, and a couple of my neighbours came over, asked me if I was alright, and basically adopted me throughout that time when I was unable to see my own family because they live so far away. And I think that's one of the beauties of this estate, because the way the buildings are set out and the cul-de-sac, we all see each other on a daily basis. It's quite small. There's 100 properties, but the way, again, they're set out is that there's about 33 houses, about 35 flats per block. So it's quite small, and there's 2 lifts, and you just see each other all the time, which really makes people care about each other, and you really notice when someone hasn't been around or is missing, or if an ambulance comes into the block. Rather than thinking what is going on, you're thinking what is going on with who, are they okay, and how can we support them.
Since October last year, we've learned that the council are trying, but basically pushing forward the development of basically what amounts to mini estate in the not very large open space in front of Trellick Tower, and they are proposing a 14-storey tower and 6-storey tower placed at the right angle to Trellick Tower, and also some houses in the old residential home, old people's home that they demolished 12-13 years ago, and alongside the service road, which they very nicely called the Muse, and also a development of some community space, very, very undefined, and you know, they're not very clear as to what they are planning to what's the use of that space is going to be under the podium of Trellick Tower, where there was a garage that they partly demolished. And also I need to say that actually that space has never been used. I mean, there was a lot of space for garages, and we could never from the very beginning use it because it was always waterlogged, and now all of a sudden it becomes something that they want to place community space and little workshops and other things there.
How has the consultation from the council been about the development plans?
Okay, they were what they would call 3 rounds of consultations. The first one has taken part in between October and December 2020. In full lockdown as well. It was what they called the blank piece of paper consultation, when they basically sent us a feedback form, and they were saying, would you like the green spaces, would you like the playground for small children, would you like playground for bigger children, what would you like there, and how would you like to for it to be designed. No mention of actual buildings that they were planning to build. So based on that, the feedback was obviously we would like green space, we would like playgrounds for children, we would like nice sort of facilities for the existing for the residents, not even existing. And then they sort of went into the second round of consultation, which was really inadequate because again it was, and that started in February 2021. Again in the lockdown, when we couldn't as residents meet, we couldn't communicate with each other really, and the way the consultation went, they have placed a presentation on council website, so only the people who actually have access to IT and know how to use it were able to take part in it, and then they distributed the hard copy feedback forms again, and they were very disingenuous about the way those feedback forms were designed, because there were a lot of leading questions, multiple choice questions. One of the questions, for example, was, would you like, and then they let the cat out of the bag, saying that we are going to build in that space, and the choice that we have is, would you like 20-story building, 18-story building, or 16-story building, full stop. There was no other option. There was no option saying none of that, lower building, nothing. And the whole form was designed in the way that the council could actually take information from these leading questions and interpret it. I mean, if you say the majority went for 16-story building, you should say there was no other option.
If the plans that the council have put forward are going to go ahead with owning the options that they've offered you, how do you feel that this will impact the residents in the Cheltenham estate?
I think, the council pushing this proposed development, and always the opening statement is, we need social housing to have over 2,000 families, and we need social housing. We do agree, all the residents here agree that there is a need for social housing. The other line is always that Trellick is an iconic building and we have to preserve the architectural heritage and. Nevertheless, what they are really doing, if that proposal goes through, what they are doing is they're cutting the listed estate, because not only Trellick is a listed building, the whole Cheltenham estate is listed, it's grade 2 listed. They are basically cutting the estate in half, creating a huge barrier between Trellick Tower side and Edenham side of it.
When we first started the residents' campaign to stop the 14 stories tower that the council was preparing to build, we started a Twitter account, and through following a lot of local people, both to Goulburn and Latimer and Grenfell activists and fire safety people, it became apparent to me that there was something referred to as a PEEP, but means personal evacuation and escape plan, that I believe is legislation. I'm not entirely sure, but it's supposed to be something in place in all buildings over 18 metres, and it's basically so that if there is some kind of an emergency where they need to get you out of the building, the firemen and the authorities know who is vulnerable or who is not able to escape by themselves. And it was quite a shock to me, because although I wasn't exactly sure of how high this building is, it's definitely more than 18 metres. It's about, I think the gentleman said 26. But it was a shock to me that, this was 4 years after Grenfell, it was coming up to the anniversary, it was early in June, that a building such as this wouldn't have one. The council are more than aware that because this building used to be attached to the old people's home that they demolished in the late 90s, that an awful lot of the residents are of an age. There's got to be at least 15 people in this block alone that are over the age of 65. And I myself have mental health problems, which mean not only do I take a sedative at night, but I'm panicky and I don't like to leave my house, and I don't know what, I would like to think I would just walk out of the house and do what the people say, but I don't know what I would do in that situation. I might try and take my cat or my belongings, or think that I was safer waiting in the house until whatever passed. So I called up the fire safety team, and in the first instance the man asked me how tall the building was. Now, like I said, I'm pretty sure it's over 18 metres, but I don't have an 18-metre tape measure in my pocket, and you would think that the fire safety team at least would have some idea of the heights of their blocks, and that they needed to do this. So he said he'd call me back. He called me back the next day and confirmed that it was high enough. And then about a week later, everyone got a letter explaining what it was about and asking them certain questions in regards to how able they'd be able to leave in an emergency. I filled that form out the same day, and I sent it back maybe 2 days later. And I know when that was because I had to send back a housing benefit form. So I knew the exact day. And basically everybody in the block that was elderly or physically disabled got a visit. And some of it was strange. My elderly neighbour that is terminally ill and on a Zimmer frame was told that she could use the lift in case of a fire, yet there's big signs that say do not use this lift in case of a fire. About a month later, a sign appeared on our notice board explaining that it was to do with building safety and emergency plans, and it had a QR code on it, which I thought was really strange because once again they're fully aware, especially due to the consultations we've had and the lack of involvement of people that can't use Zoom. They know that most of these people don't know how to use a QR code. And at the time I found it, I knew how to use a QR code, but because of other circumstances, I had no credit on my phone. So this poster was absolutely useless to anyone, really. It had no telephone number, no names, nothing, just a QR code that you should scan in case of an emergency. So now we're in October, and I received a phone call on Friday, funnily enough, and it was a gentleman from the Health and Safety Department, and he asked me did I fill out a form, and I said I did 4 months ago, and he was apologising and he was very sorry, and I said to him, I find it very strange that everyone that had a physical disability or of an age where they would find it physically difficult to leave the building has been dealt with and has had someone to come out and visit them, and has had these plans drawn up, and I haven't. And he said would you like to have an interview? And it's like, yeah, that's why I filled the form out. So that was on Friday. Today's Monday. He said someone will call me by the end of the week, but as it stands, if there was a fire or an emergency in the next week or 2 weeks or however long it takes them to draw up my personal evacuation plan, I'd like to think I'd know what to do, but it's not in place.
Sorry.